The world stopped when breaking news flashed across every screen. Remy Ma had been arrested again. It's time on allegations far darker than anyone imagined. The headline read, "Remy Ma questioned in connection to murder plot." Fans, critics, and the entire hip-hop industry were left stunned. The same woman who had fought for years to rebuild her name and career was now facing the possibility of losing everything. Again, according to early reports, investigators had uncovered messages and phone records linking Remy to a violent plan involving her son's alleged attackers. What shocked everyone even more was what Remy herself told authorities. "I was trying to protect my son." Those words alone sent social media into meltdown. Was this a confession or a desperate mother's cry for help? Outside the police precinct, chaos erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing nonstop, fans crying out her name as she was led away in cuffs. For those who knew her story, it was heartbreak all over again. For her enemies, it was vindication. Inside the interrogation room, Remy's silence spoke volumes. She wasn't the fierce rapper the world once saw. She was a mother cornered by fear, guilt, and love. And as the truth began to unravel, one thing became clear. This wasn't about fame or revenge anymore. This was about survival and the lengths a mother would go to protect her child, even if it meant crossing the line forever. The sound of camera shutters echoed through the precinct hallway as Remy Ma was escorted inside, wrists bound in cold metal cuffs. Reporters yelled her name, flashing lights illuminated her face. And yet her expression was unreadable, a mix of fear, exhaustion, and quiet defiance. For years, she had rebuilt her life after prison, fought her way back into music, and tried to keep her family out of the chaos that once consumed her. But now, the past had found her again, and this time, the stakes were even higher. The story broke overnight. Police had linked Remy Ma to a violent retaliation plot following an assault on her son. According to investigators, someone close to her family had been attacked weeks earlier, and whispers in the streets claimed Remy wanted revenge. At first, it sounded like gossip, the kind of street rumor that fades fast. But when detectives uncovered encrypted phone messages and calls between Remy and a man later accused of carrying out the attack, the rumor became a case. By morning, officers were at her doorstep. Her son stood frozen as police knocked, his mother still in her robe, confused and half asleep. "Reminisce, Mackie. You're under arrest for questioning in connection with a homicide," one officer said coldly. Her heart sank. "What homicide?" she demanded, but the only answer she got was, "You'll find out soon enough." Inside the precinct, she sat across from two detectives, the air thick with tension. One slid a folder across the table, photos, text messages, call logs. "We have reason to believe you helped plan this," the detective said flatly. Remy stared at the photos, grainy images of a man lying on the ground, a pool of blood near his head. "I didn't plan anything," she whispered. "I was trying to protect my son." The younger detective leaned forward. "Protect him from what, Ms. Mackie? Because from where we're sitting, this looks like revenge." Remy closed her eyes, tears threatening to fall. "They came after my boy. He was jumped, beaten, almost killed. You think I'm supposed to sit back and let that happen?" Her voice cracked, anger and pain colliding. "I made some calls. Yeah, I was scared. I wanted to make sure he was safe. But I didn't tell nobody to kill nobody." Meanwhile, outside, the media frenzy was exploding. Social media was flooded with hashtags like #FreeRemy and #ProtectYourKids. Fans were divided. Some saw her as a mother defending her family, others as someone who still hadn't escaped her violent past. Every major news outlet played the same clip: Remy being led into custody, her head down, refusing to answer questions. Papoose, who had been out of town for a show, jumped on the first flight back to New York. When he arrived at the station, security wouldn't let him see her. "She didn't do nothing," he said to the cameras outside. "Remy's not the same person she was. She's a mother first. Y'all twisting it 'cause she famous." His words spread online instantly, sparking more debate about whether the system was targeting her or uncovering a dark truth. Inside the interrogation room, Remy sat silently as her lawyer finally entered. He placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Don't say another word. Let me handle it." She nodded, but her eyes said everything. She wasn't just afraid for herself. She was afraid for her son. Later that evening, after hours of questioning, police escorted her to a holding cell. The cold metal door shut behind her with a hollow clang. She sat on the small bench, staring at the wall, her mind replaying the moment her son had come home bruised and bleeding weeks ago. He had begged her not to get involved. "Ma, I'm fine," he'd said, but she knew better. She had seen that kind of violence before. She knew how fast it could spiral, and now her worst fear had come true. Someone was dead, and the city believed she had ordered it. The courthouse was silent, yet the energy was explosive. Reporters filled every inch of the hallway as Remy Ma was escorted back into custody after the shocking confession that left everyone speechless. Fans couldn't believe what they'd heard, Remy admitting she had a role in a murder plot. No one saw it coming. But as always, there was more to the story than what was on the surface. As the prosecution replayed the police recordings, it became clear that Remy wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, but she might have helped set the stage. The conversation between her and her son, Papoose Jr., was emotional and haunting. In the recording, she said, "I told you to stay home. I told you not to go. But I couldn't just let them hurt you." The courtroom was dead silent. The prosecutor leaned in, emphasizing every word. "Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a case of self-defense. This was premeditation, a mother willing to cross the line to protect her son, even if it meant someone else's life would end." Papoose, sitting in the back row, kept his head down. His face told a story of exhaustion, confusion, and heartbreak. He had always believed that Remy's love was fierce, but now that same love was tearing their family apart. Outside the courtroom, chaos erupted. Journalists bombarded every witness, every relative, and even Remy's attorney, demanding answers. One reporter shouted, "Remy, did you really plan this?" Another yelled, "Is this about revenge for your son's beating?" The noise was deafening, but Remy remained silent, her face unreadable behind her dark glasses. But inside her mind, things were unraveling. Memories flashed like lightning, the night her son came home bruised and broken. The tears in his eyes as he said, "They tried to kill me." Ma, she remembered holding him, feeling his pain, and vowing that nobody would ever hurt him again. It wasn't about fame or pride, it was about survival. And that promise had driven her to the edge. Meanwhile, social media was in flames. Fans were divided. Some defended her, calling her a ride-or-die mother who did what any parent would. Others labeled her a cold-blooded criminal, saying she used motherhood as a shield for violence. Hashtags like #FreeRemy and #JusticeForKhalil. The name of the victim trended simultaneously. The internet was a war zone. Papoose, her husband, couldn't escape the spotlight either. The media painted him as the mastermind who might have known more than he let on. Some outlets even claimed he'd helped Remy cover up evidence. Pap tried to stay silent, but finally broke during an emotional Instagram live. "I don't care what they say about me," he said, voice shaking. "All I know is that my wife tried to protect her family. People talk about loyalty until it's time to show it. I stand with Remy, always have, always will." His comments only made things worse. The prosecutor cited that live stream in court the next day, arguing that this wasn't an act of protection, it was a family conspiracy. But what nobody expected was the testimony that came next. A close friend of Remy's, someone who had been in her inner circle for years, took the stand. Her name, Monique. Dressed in all black, she looked nervous but determined. When asked about the night of the murder, she hesitated before saying Remy didn't plan it. Not like they're saying. She was scared. She thought her son's life was in danger. All she wanted was to scare the people who hurt him. That statement changed everything. The defense jumped on it instantly, arguing that Remy's actions were driven by fear, not intent. Her lawyer, a sharp and composed woman named Alicia Torres, looked directly at the jury and said, "Fear makes people do desperate things. Remy Ma didn't want anyone dead. She wanted her child safe. And when the system failed to protect him, she did what she thought she had to do. As those words echoed through the room, Remy's eyes filled with tears. It was the first time she showed emotion in weeks. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every drop that fell from her face. It wasn't the face of a villain. It was the face of a mother crushed by her own choices that night. The networks replayed her courtroom reaction non-stop. Talk shows debated whether Remy should face life in prison or if the system was punishing her for protecting her family. One legal analyst said this case isn't just about crime, it's about the gray area between love and law. How far can a parent go to protect their child before it becomes criminal? Behind bars, Remy tried to stay strong. But the guilt was eating her alive. In her cell, she scribbled letters to her son, her husband, and even the victim's mother. She never sent them, but in one letter she wrote, "If I could take it back, I would. I just wanted to keep him safe. I didn't know it would go this far." Meanwhile, Papoose was doing everything in his power to keep their family together. He visited her regularly, though each visit was more painful than the last. "You're not alone, baby," he whispered through the glass. "We've gone, fight this." But even he couldn't hide his fear. He knew that the evidence was stacking up. As the trial moved forward, one piece of footage became the turning point. Surveillance video from the night of the murder. The grainy clip showed a car linked to Remy's assistant parked near the scene. Moments later, two figures appeared, one matching her son's description. The footage didn't show the shooting, but it proved that someone close to her was there. When the clip played in court, gasps filled the room. The prosecution smiled. They thought it was checkmate. But the defense wasn't done. They revealed something that shook everyone to the core. A second recording from a nearby street cam, showing a group of men approaching that same car minutes earlier, the same men who had attacked Remy's son weeks before. The defense attorney turned to the jury. "This wasn't a hunt," she said. "It was retaliation from the same people who threatened her family. She didn't plan this. She got caught in their trap." The courtroom erupted. Even the judge had to call for order. For the first time, the possibility that Remy might have been set up began to seem real. The world watched in suspense as the case took a new turn. Was Remy Ma a criminal mastermind or a desperate mother caught in someone else's war? And as the hearing ended that day, Remy looked toward her son, tears in her eyes, and whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "Whatever happens next, remember I did it for you?" The final day of the trial arrived, and the courthouse was surrounded by hundreds of people. Some came to show support, holding posters that read "Free Remy Ma" and "Justice for Mothers." Others came demanding accountability for the victim, Khalil. It was a storm of emotion, grief, anger, loyalty, and disbelief, all colliding on one street in Manhattan. Inside, the air was heavy. The jury had been deliberating for nearly 2 days. Remy Ma sat silently beside her attorney, Alicia Torres, her hands cuffed loosely in front of her. She had barely slept in weeks. Papoose sat in the first row behind her, rubbing his forehead and whispering prayers under his breath. Their son, Papoose Jr., looked drained, pale, nervous, and broken. When the judge entered the room, everyone stood. Cameras clicked, pens scribbled, and hearts pounded. The clerk handed the judge a folded slip of paper, the verdict form. But before the judge could speak, Alicia rose from her seat. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "before the jury delivers its decision, my client has something to say." The courtroom froze. Remy slowly stood up, her voice trembling as she faced the judge. "I know I made mistakes," she said softly, "but I didn't plan to hurt anybody. I wasn't trying to start no war. I was trying to end one. My son was all I had. When I saw what they did to him, when I saw the fear in his eyes, I lost myself." Her voice cracked, but she continued, "I ain't no saint. I've done things I'm not proud of. But I never wanted nobody dead. I just wanted my son to live." Even the jurors, who'd been stone-faced for weeks, looked shaken. The prosecutor didn't interrupt, not this time. They knew this was a mother speaking from her soul, not a defendant trying to escape punishment. Then, as if on cue, the judge nodded for the foreperson to read the verdict. The paper unfolded slowly, the sound echoing through the silence. We, the jury, find the defendant, Remy Mackey, guilty of accessory after the fact to manslaughter, but not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Gasps filled the room. Some cried, others clapped quietly. It was a partial victory, not freedom, but not life in prison either. Remy covered her face and wept as Papoose stood, tears streaming down his cheeks. Their son collapsed into his aunt's arms. Overwhelmed, the judge ordered her to serve 5 years with credit for time already served. The courtroom erupted again, reporters sprinting outside to break the story first. But what came next shocked everyone. Moments after the verdict, an older woman stood from the victim's family section. It was Halil's mother. Everyone recognized her from the news, a woman who'd lost her only son. She looked at Remy and said, "I should hate you. I should want you gone forever. But when I see you cry for your son, I understand." The room went silent. Even Remy looked stunned. The woman stepped closer to the defense table. "You made a choice no mother should have to make. I lost my boy, but I don't want you to lose yours too. Let's stop this hate before it takes more of us." Remy broke down completely. She mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," over and over again. It wasn't enough to undo what had happened. Nothing ever would be. But in that moment, something human returned to the story. The press described it as the most emotional scene ever. Witnessed in a New York courtroom. Cameras caught every tear, every whisper, every gesture of forgiveness. But behind the cameras, the truth still had layers. The truth still had layers. That night, a confidential police report surfaced online, suggesting there had been another suspect. Someone close to the victim who might have orchestrated the fight that started it all. The internet exploded. Fans began questioning whether Remy's family had been manipulated into reacting to a setup. Alicia Torres, Remy's attorney, held a press conference the next morning. "This case was about more than guilt or innocence," she said firmly. "It was about a system that pushes families into violence because they feel unprotected." Remy didn't want to be a criminal. She wanted to be heard. Meanwhile, in her jail cell, Remy wrote in her journal. She wrote about her childhood in the Bronx, the struggles, the fame, and how quickly success could turn to tragedy. In one entry, she wrote, "They'll remember the crime before they remember the pain. But maybe one day when my son reads this, he'll understand that everything I did, even the wrong things, came from love." Weeks later, during a prison interview with a major network, Remy opened up for the first time publicly. She sat in a gray uniform, her hands folded neatly, speaking softly but with purpose. "I ain't perfect. I've done my time before. I thought I learned everything I needed to. But life always finds a way to test you again. I was trying to protect my baby, but in doing that, became the same thing I was running from. Someone trapped in the system." The interviewer asked if she regretted her decision. Remy paused, then said, "I regret the outcome. But I don't regret loving my son. I'll never apologize for that." The clip went viral instantly. People called it the most powerful statement of her career. Celebrities from across the industry, Cardi B, Fat Joe, and even 50 Cent, posted messages showing support. Cardi wrote, "This world don't understand what mothers go through. I pray for you, sis." But not everyone agreed. The victim's cousin appeared on a morning show, furious. "Everybody's making her the victim now," he said angrily. "What about Khalil? What about his mother crying every night? Nobody's making songs about that pain." And that was the tragic truth. There were no winners here. 2 families destroyed, 2 mothers grieving, and a young man gone forever. Months later, Remy was transferred to a lower security facility. She began mentoring young inmates, running writing programs, and speaking about violence prevention. The same fire that once fueled her music was now being used to guide others. Guards even said she'd become a role model behind bars. On visiting day, Papoose came to see her. The glass window between them couldn't stop the connection in their eyes. "You held us together," she said, smiling faintly. "Nah," he replied, "you did, even when the world turned its back." He pressed his hand to the glass, and she did the same. It was silent but powerful, a moment that told an entire story of loyalty, heartbreak, and unconditional love as she prepared to return to her cell. An officer handed her a letter. It was from Halil's mother, the same woman who had spoken in court. The letter read, "I think of my son every day, but I also think of yours. Maybe God put this pain in our lives to teach something deeper. I pray for you, Remy. I pray that when you walk out of that place, you teach others not to walk the same road." Remy folded the letter, tears falling on the paper. She looked up and whispered, "I promise." When news of the letter broke, it touched millions. It became a symbol of forgiveness and humanity, the kind that only those who've suffered deeply can offer. Months turned into years. When Remy finally walked out of prison gates again, reporters surrounded her, shouting questions. She didn't answer. She just looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and said, "I'm ready to start over." The cameras followed her as she embraced Papoose and her son. No words, just tears, tears of pain, of relief, and of survival back home. She released a statement through her team. "You can't change the past, but you can decide what kind of person you'll be when the world gives you another chance. I'm still Remy, still a mother, still a fighter." The world might never forget what happened, but it also wouldn't forget how she faced it. In the end, Remy Ma's story wasn't about crime. It was about the cost of love, the limits of loyalty, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her child, even when it means losing everything. Remy Ma's story isn't just another headline. It's a reflection of the painful choices people make when love and fear collide. She wasn't just a rapper caught in controversy. She was a mother trying to protect her child in a world that's never been kind to her. But here's the real question. How far is too far when it comes to defending the ones you love? Was Remy a criminal blinded by rage, or a mother who broke under the pressure of survival? This case shook the entire hip-hop community because it forced everyone to face something uncomfortable: the cost of loyalty and the line between justice and revenge. People watched her rise, fall, rebuild, and now face the consequences of her own pain. And even now, fans can't decide whether to condemn her or stand behind her. But maybe that's the truth of it. Life isn't black and white, and neither is love. So now it's your turn to weigh in. What do you think? Did Remy Ma's maternal instincts go too far? Or was she caught in a trap that society set long before she even had a chance to change? Let's hear your take in the comments. Because this story isn't over, it's still unfolding in the hearts of everyone watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more real, unfiltered stories that dig deeper than the headlines. Because sometimes the truth hurts, but it's always worth hearing. It's always worth hearing.